Hi, my name is Dr. Nathan Groot. I am a music instructor at the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts, where I teach string ensemble, applied string lessons, and other music courses. Today, we're going to be looking at an excerpt for the Cadet Orchestra audition. This is for the North region of Arkansas for junior high students. First, we're going to play this excerpt, listen to the Mockingbird, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. All right, first things first, we are in G major. You'll notice that we have one sharp, and that sharp is F sharp. I would encourage you to play a G major scale before playing this piece. Starting on the G string, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and then back down. You'll notice that on our D and G strings, we have this 2-3 finger pattern. When we get to the A string, playing in the key of G on the A string, A, B, C natural, D, E. So we have a 1-2 finger pattern on the A string. So that's something to remember. Just remember that C's are natural, so we're going to want that second finger to be right next to our first finger there. All right, now let's take a look at our time signature. We're in 4/4, so there are 4 beats in a measure, and what we're counting are quarter notes. You might notice that at the very beginning of this excerpt, there are just 4 16th notes and then a bar line. So I just said there were 4 beats in a measure. What's going on with that? This is what we would call an anacrusis or pickup. So this is actually the 4th beat from the very end of the excerpt. So when you're counting this off to yourself, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4 E and a 1 and 2. And that's sort of where that fits in. So this is a pickup to the first B 8th note that we see. 4 E and a 1 and 2. So make sure this sounds like it's leading in to that real first downbeat of the piece. All right, so let's talk just a little bit about rhythm. There's one measure in particular, really it happens twice, so I guess 2, that I think we should address, and that is the syncopation in measure 3 and measure 7. Let me play that for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have an 8th note, and then a quarter note, and then another 8th note. So if we were counting this out, we have an 8th note, 1, and then a quarter note, and 2, and then another 8th note, and 3, and 4, and... So imagine if we split this measure into just a bunch of 8th notes. That's how this would sound. So when you're working on syncopations like this, it can be helpful to think about where all those 8th notes are falling and even play each of the 8th notes. So this metronome is on 60, and you'll sort of hear where this big beat falls when I play this with the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. You hear how beat 2 falls and I'm not moving? I'm still holding that A. That's because the A goes from the and of 1 over beat 2, and then we re-articulate the next 8th note A on the and of 2. And this is, I know, very confusing probably to listen to, but hopefully this little visual I'm providing for you helps explain that a little bit. The syncopation is something that's going to be imperative that you totally master. This is one of the most challenging parts of this excerpt, and it's something that any adjudicator at an audition is going to be listening for very carefully to see if you get that rhythm right. The other rhythms in this piece aren't super difficult. We have 16th notes, we have 8th notes, we have quarter notes, we have some rests. Nothing super difficult. I would encourage you to try with a metronome counting this out using 4E and A for 16th notes, 1 and for 8th notes, and 1 for quarter notes and half notes. So if I count this out just to sort of show you what I mean, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3. 4E and A, 1 and 2, 3. 4E and A, 1 and 2, 3. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3. 4E and A, 1 and 2, 3. 4E and A, 1 and 2, 3. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, off. So practice doing that. You can practice doing it with me, but also practice it with a metronome by yourself. This metronome right now is on 60. And if you need to, you can write it in your music. If you don't want it in your actual book that you bought, you can make a photocopy and sort of mark that up. That's something I like to do because I like to keep my music kind of clean. So if you want to make a photocopy and sort of mark it up as much as you want with all of these extra markings that I'm giving you, definitely feel free. All right, next, let's talk about some of our articulations. At the very beginning, the very first full measure, we have staccatos. These are these dots that you see above the note. That means they're going to be a little bit shorter. There's space after them. Let's imagine if this opening didn't have staccatos, this is what it would sound like. So really connected, right? So staccatos are going to add a little space there between those eighth notes. Let me show you that. This is with the staccatos. So importantly, whenever you're adding an articulation, make sure that you're not changing the rhythm. Make sure that whatever you're doing is still allowing you to begin the next note at the right time. So be very careful with that, and I would encourage you to practice with a metronome. The next one we're gonna look at is in our tricky rhythm. We have an accent here on the syncopated note. So an accent means you're going to emphasize this note. You're going to give it a little punch. Pum-pa, pum-pa. You're gonna do this with a little bit more weight and a little bit more speed in the bow. So more weight, more speed, emphasizing this note. So it's going to be louder and have a stronger attack. This is a little bit tricky for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're probably going to be a little occupied thinking about the rhythm, the syncopation, but the other reason it's tricky is this accent falls on an up bow, and accents are just a little bit more difficult to do on an up bow than a down bow, and the reason is down bows are generally a little heavier. We have gravity on our side and our hand is heavier. So an up bow, you're kind of fighting against gravity and fighting against the fact that you're a little higher up in the bow and the hand is down here. So it's gonna take a little bit more effort. In this case, just a little pinch, a little bit of weight from the hand. So try this with me. I'm just gonna go ba, ba. So 1, 2, ready, go. Down, up, down, up. See how the second one is louder? So next we're gonna talk about the bow and dynamics. So there are a couple of things that we're going to do with the bow that don't have to do with dynamics. So let's start with dynamics. We start out here at the dynamic forte. You'll see that F there at the beginning. So we're going to want that to be louder. And then we have the same material again, but we're now at piano. You see that P there at the end of the first line. So statement of the material loud, statement of the material soft. Does it stay soft to the end? No, it doesn't. We are piano, 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 until 2 measures before the end where we have this crescendo that brings us from piano to forte. So balancing these and really making playing these dynamics a part of your practice early on will help make sure that you're able to pull them off in an audition. So let's talk just a little bit about how we achieve these dynamics with the bow. What are our 3 bow variables? Weight, speed, contact point. Weight is the amount of weight that you transfer from your arm through the bow and into the string to allow that string to vibrate. So generally, more weight is louder, less weight is softer. Next is speed. More speed, faster bow, more bow is going to be a little bit louder in general, and less speed, slower bow is generally going to be a little softer, depending on the other variables you use. Contact point. Contact point closer to the fingerboard is going to be a little softer and also a slightly different color, a different timbre. And then closer to the bridge is generally going to be louder and a more focused sound. So just be careful not to get right on the bridge because you'll get ponticello there. So right about here is perfect. Now, one other thing we should talk about is where in the bow are we? So if we look at our bow here, we have the frog, we have the tip, we have the middle. So the frog is a heavier part of the bow, and it's also where our hand is. The tip is going to be lighter. Our hand is way out here. It's harder to play loud at the tip. Also, down bows are going to be louder than up bows. That's why when you see these bowings in here, you should make sure and follow them because they're there for a reason. At the very beginning, right next to the forte, you see LH. That is for lower half. And that means if this is the middle, you should be in the lower half. So not up here, make sure you're starting here. Why? Because we're forte and we want the weight of that hand and frog to help us out here. So lower half, more weight, more speed, contact point that's closer to here, closer to the bridge. So at the very beginning we have lower half, then we have a breath mark. When we have this breath mark, we should treat it as an actual lift, a bow circle here. As we come off, we bring the bow back, set on the string before moving, and then go. Now, you also need to make sure this is in rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Make sure that you're starting those second set of 16th notes at the right time, so that bow circle really does need to be pretty small. When you get to the end of the first line, we have this half note, 1, 2, off, and then we have another breath mark. This breath mark could be a lift, like that. You can do that, and if you find if you're running out of bow, you can do that. What I would recommend though is actually just save your bow a little bit more on this half note and stop it at about the middle. The reason is you'll notice right next to our piano dynamic marking, we have an M, and that's telling us we want to play this next part in the middle of the bow. So for that breath mark, I would just go to the middle and stay there. Okay, so when you do that, we're forte, now we're in the middle, it's automatically less heavy, but we need to do more than just play in the middle to go from forte to piano. So what I want you to do is think about moving your contact point just a little bit closer to the fingerboard, use less weight and use less speed. If you're using less speed, there may or may not be a reason to actually lift your bow each of these times. If you're finding that you're working your way out to the tip, you can either use a little bit less bow, work around that a little bit by using a little bit more bow on up bows, or you can just lift. The only reason it's a little tricky to lift here is you can get a little bouncing. So if you do choose to lift here, make sure that it's a small one. Me personally, I like to just play this right in the middle without lifting, because I find that I don't really have trouble getting stuck at the tip in this section because it's piano and I'm not really using all that much bow. Now in measure 7, we have this crescendo and then forte. So we're starting this out, this is pickup to 7. We start out piano and then we have this crescendo. So as you play this, you should be working your way back toward the bridge and gradually applying more weight and more speed as you play measure 7. I would encourage you to practice measure 7 a lot just to really get that effect of piano to forte. All right, so for the next part of the video, I'm just gonna play it at different tempos straight through. Quick disclaimer, this is not the only way to practice, just sort of playing it from beginning to end at a tempo and then bumping it up. In fact, it's actually the worst way to practice. This is sort of a framework for you to use with other types of practice. So let's say you play it at 60 and then you make a mistake in measure 3. So at that point, you should pause the video and isolate that measure, diagnose the problem and fix the problem, and then try putting it back into context. You don't want to practice your mistakes over and over again because they kind of get baked in to how you perform it. So make sure that you are keeping an open ear, watching what you're doing, record yourself and listen back, compare to see if everything you want is happening, and then try bumping up the tempo with me if you want. I would also encourage you to just use a metronome by yourself in addition to this part of the video. This is 60. 1, 2, 3. This is 70. 1, 2, ready, go. This is 80. 1, 2, ready, go. This is 90. 1, 2, ready, go. And this is our goal tempo of 100. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, so thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or have any thoughts about this video, if there's anything I sort of glossed over that you want more information on, definitely feel free to comment below, contact me on my website or any of my social media. I'd love to hear from you. I wish you the very best of luck on your upcoming audition, and as always, happy practicing.